Welcome everybody. Sorry for the delay, but we're glad you're here. This is Indiana Adoptee Network's episode of Adoption Happy Hour. We do these episodes mostly every Friday night. We've skipped a few, but as long as we continue to have the attendance that we've had before, we're going to keep them up. So we've got an exciting guest tonight, and we want to move this along. So I'm Marcy, just to let you know, I'm your host with Pam Cordano. She's in the Zoom room helping out with a little bit of technology. We love to have you guys put your comments in the chat bar, say hello, what state or country you're calling from, and we just want to tell you a little bit about us for those that are new and don't know much about us. Don't let the name fool you, Indiana Adoptee Network, even though we're located in Indiana. We are here for all adoptees, birth parents, and adopted parents as well. We host a national annual conference. Actually, we were on our fourth one, of which Pam Cordano was actually going to present at. We host webinars, videos, of course, the Zoom meetings. Our sister organization was here, and that was where we did our legislation to get our records open for Indiana. We do partner with other nonprofits like Adoptees Connect and Saving Our Sisters. We do show some books, some films, and we assist other adoptees with DNA, and we're here for you as a resource. So anyone and everyone can attend our conference, or there's no membership dues, there's nothing. It's just, we're just here to network and support one another. So we are going to be changing our website soon, doing some branding, and we are changing our name. So we'll keep you updated when that happens. That's going to be happening very shortly though. Okay, with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Pam Cordano in the Zoom room with a little bit of housekeeping items on how we're going to run this evening, and she's got some disclosures.
Oh, hold on a second here. Wrong thing. Sorry, this is my first time, people.
Yeah, we let Jen is on the road traveling to see her grandson for his birthday this weekend, so.
Yeah, I gotta get to this one little thing here. Let me see if this is the right one here. Nope. I can't get to my right thing here. Sorry, guys. All right. Can you see the right thing, Marcy?
Nope, that's the first one.
All right. Can you see it now?
Nope.
Well, I'll be boogered. Well, let me go back here.
This is why we have a Jennifer, right?
Well, it's not that. I know what I'm doing. It won't, my computer is not cooperating. All right, let's try this. Let's see if this is the correct one. Can you see it now?
No.
Nice. Well, 2021 will be there, or be square. It says it is what it is, but it isn't saying it isn't the right one. Are we there?
There we go.
There we go.
Yay!
It's my computer, not me, guys. All right. So for participant safety, we're going to lock all participants on mute and unlock microphones one at a time, only when you've been recognized by raising a virtual hand, which I think that is kind of confusing for the first time for me. So I don't know if you guys have done this before, but if you look on your main screen, if you go over to reactions, you can raise your hand, or if you go into the chat, you can see there's a raise your hand. And this is a public meeting with no guarantee or representation that information or identity shared is confidential. If you're experiencing a serious mental health event, such as suicidal thoughts, please contact a licensed professional or suicide hotline at 273-8255. Marcy, you're up.
Okay, I'm just answering Rich. Okay, all righty. Without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about our spotlight guest this evening. It's Pam Cordano, which most of you know. She is a psychotherapist, cancer survivor, an adoptee who is passionate about helping people identify and cultivate what is uniquely meaningful to them, which allows for increased vitality and new possibilities. Pam is particularly interested in the power of community to catalyze healing and growth. She is the author of 10 Foundations for a Meaningful Life, no matter what's happened. I've read it. If you haven't, get your copy. I loved it. Great job. You can get it on Amazon. And with that, Pam, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you. We're so glad to have you tonight.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm really excited to share my MDMA therapy experience with you. Before we start that, I was writing this morning and I wrote a paragraph, and I just feel like I want to read this paragraph to you because it's going to help me get here, and it might help some of you get here also. So this is the paragraph I wrote. I want to acknowledge that today is Juneteenth, a holiday that marks the end of slavery across the United States. This year, Juneteenth comes amidst a national reckoning of the legacies of slavery and racial injustice. Most everyone I've been talking with, friends, family, clients, is in a lot of pain. What I've been personally thinking about a lot since I had my MDMA therapy session is the importance of building capacity to bear pain and grief in us and around us caused by racism and injustice. Capacity is the soil from which effective action can grow. Capacity is an inside job. Trauma interferes with how much capacity we have for the world. A lot of my life, I have felt like I can't handle one more thing. Maybe you felt like this too. In honor of Juneteenth, I want to encourage you to join me in navigating and struggling with the inner relationship between trauma and capacity. So that's my paragraph I wanted to share with you. Now I'd like to tell you about my journey to MDMA psychotherapy as an adoptee. I had this therapy session on May 31st, which was 19 days ago, and I'm counting because I really feel like my life could now be broken up into before my MDMA experience and after my MDMA experience. And it was that powerful to me. I called Marcy 2 days after my therapy session, and I just said, like, Marcy, I have to share what happened with the adoptive community. And she, organized this and let me come in and tell you about it. But this community, you were among the first people I thought of. I thought of my kids, I thought of my husband, I thought of some close friends, but I thought of you because I have been looking my whole life for what could possibly be powerful enough to get under the roots of the trauma that I've lived with. And there's an analogy of how I want to explain what my trauma feels like in my system. And it starts with my dentist, whose name is Richard. I go an hour to see my dentist, Richard. He's an awesome dentist. He teaches around the world dentistry, and I really trust him. And plus, he's invested in me because I'm married to his youngest brother. So it's a good deal. But whenever I have a cavity, he says, oh, it's just a tiny one. We don't even need Novocaine. And so he starts to drill, and just a little bit in, what he discovers every single time is I have this giant cavity inside my tooth, and it's a big problem. And now the Novocaine comes out and I'm there for hours. And that's what my trauma feels like. I feel like I've got this edifice of, doing pretty well. Like, I've got a job, I've got a long-term marriage. My kids are reasonably all right. My house is nice, but you just start to scratch the surface with me, and you hit this giant cavity of trauma. And to try to manage this giant cavity of trauma is like a full-time job, because I'm managing it all the time, even as I'm going to work and traveling and cooking dinner and watching Netflix and all the other things that everybody does. So it's like I'm juggling this trauma at the same time. I'm imagining some of you relate to this. It's just a wild guess. So when I think about what I'm calling my trauma, it really feels like, trauma feels sort of like a clinical word. And I thought about the word panic, like living with a cavity of panic. But more recently, I've been thinking about what it really feels like is terror, living with terror. And, you know, terror is exhausting. It's just exhausting. I'm terrified of everything. I'm terrified of my husband or kids getting in an accident. I was terrified to come to Indiana to give the keynote talk. Are you kidding? I was just like, how am I going to do it? Like, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to pass out. And I was already losing sleep last fall, thinking about coming in the spring to see you guys in Indiana. It's just pervasive. I don't need to go on and on about this. I know you understand. So when the pandemic happened in March, I just put my book out, which was nerve-wracking and terrifying. And it became clear that I wasn't going to be flying anywhere. I had to cancel coming to Indiana. I had to cancel a whole bunch of other public things. And I'm telling you, my first reaction was like, thank God. Like, finally the universe has shown up for me and I'm off the hook. I don't have to do anything. I can just be in my pajamas and eat junk food and just hide in the house. Like, this is what I've wanted to do probably since I was born. You know, I can just take a break finally. So I was just so relieved. And when I called my talk like the pandemic, the puppy, and MDMA, I mean, this is the pandemic part. It was like, thank God. So I was enjoying that for a couple weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then I decided I needed a puppy. So I went to a park at nighttime, an hour from my house, to a city that used to be the murder capital of the United States, with a big wad of cash to exchange for this new puppy I was getting. And of course, that didn't scare me at all. That's not what I'm scared of. I'm scared of loss and rejection. I'm not scared of going to a park at night to get a puppy. That was, my alarm system is kind of haywire in my head, and scary things don't seem scary, and not scary things do seem scary. So it's like that. So I got my puppy Bentley, and I have not had a baby in my house for 21 years. And as an adoptee, like, having a baby in the house brought up more terror. It was like, I would get up in the morning and I would listen. Is he breathing? He's in his kennel next to the bed. I wouldn't hear him breathing. Did he die at night? If he's running around, is he going to break his leg? What's this bump on his fur? Something's wrong. I have my other dog, Oscar, who was being really aggressive with him. Oh my gosh, this poor baby puppy, he's going to think that the world is so mean and it's going to affect his whole personality. And I was just on edge. I was like, I was in my trauma, you know, having a baby in the house. And of course, you know why? It's because it was in babyhood where everything went wrong. So that's why the second part of this talk was called The Puppy. So I was probably, when I entered the MDMA therapy session, I was just more keyed up than usual. I was just agitated from the puppy. Okay, so then, you know, I was thinking about babies and Bentley. And babies, what they do is they take in the world. You know, that's what they're doing. They're taking in with their eyes, they're taking in with their ears, they're taking in touch, they're taking in milk, they're taking in people, they're taking in mom, they're taking in connection. And I was thinking about me as a baby, and I know many of you, maybe all of you, and what I was taking into my system as a baby was so much chaos. And that's what was happening around me, was just chaos that for 6 months on and off with my birth mother, and foster care, 2 foster care homes, and adopted by people, and some danger in my life. And watching Bentley, I was just aware of the magnitude of this little being, and how, like, the idea that I was like a particle of dust, and there was this storm, and I had no agency. I was just being flung around by all of it. And I'm just telling all of this to you because maybe you can feel it, but I can just feel a visceral sense of just the magnitude of why we talk so much about adoptee trauma and why this is even such a thing, and why I would go to the expense and the length to take MDMA with people to try to even get under it. So, okay. You know, I've tried for my whole life, for years, well, most of my life, to address this trauma that I'm telling you about. And let me describe what it's like. It's like my trauma feels like a wild plant, like a wild weed that starts off in the base of me and is just growing like this. And then I go to therapy for 4 decades, and I go to spiritual teachers, I do yoga, I do EMDR, you know, take medication. I could make a big list of just a million things. And what those things feel like is they're like pruning the wild weed, pruning it. So I'm in this sort of race of trying to like stay ahead of it as the trauma is just kind of growing like this weed from the base of me. And I think all of that stuff I've done to try to heal has really helped. I mean, I think that it really saved my life, saved the quality of my life, but it didn't get underneath the root ball. And that's what the problem has been. And so I've been researching MDMA for a year, trying to understand, could this be something that could get underneath the root of my trauma? Like really not managing it, but get it out of me. Is there something that could get it out of me? That's what I wanted to know. And a lot of the research is centered around like single incident trauma, or like a limited frame of trauma, like maybe somebody who has gone, you know, to war for a period of time, or somebody who had a bad accident or something like that. And I didn't know, I hadn't read anything about infancy trauma and if that could be something that would be addressed by MDMA. So I found a psychiatrist and also an attachment-based therapist to, in an underground kind of way, administer this treatment to me. And it was really important to me to have somebody who was attachment informed and adoption informed, but primarily attachment informed, that would be working with me, because I knew I'd be going into that deep place inside, or I hoped I was going to be. And I thought that would give me the best shot at it. I didn't want some new person that didn't know working with my system. Like that would be terrible. So I felt very confident in who I worked with. And you know, if you consider doing this, you should definitely make sure you work with somebody that you really trust and who understands attachment and adoption and things like that. So yeah, so I'm just gonna get into this now and tell you what it was like. Okay, it's a little bit wild, so maybe you guys should put on your seatbelts. It actually was more wild than I had anticipated. So this is what happened. Okay, I'm gonna try to really be in my body as I tell you this story, because I think it'll be more fun for you and probably for me as well. Okay, I drove to the place where it was gonna be. Well, I had my husband drop me off, and I was nervous. I couldn't take certain medications beforehand. I couldn't eat 3 hours before. I wore comfortable clothes, and I was panicked. I didn't sleep the whole night before. I was so worried. And I was worried about all these possible things. What if I have an allergic reaction? What if I lose my mind? What if I have a heart attack? What if, you know, I throw up because I have a phobia of throwing up? What if this, what if that? So I go in and I sit down with them, and they're all calm. There's some nice music playing. The couch has kind of been turned into this bed. It's very comfortable looking. And so one of them says to me, would you like to they gave me the medicine. So I drank it down. It's very pure. You know, there's no additives. It's pure MDMA. It's not like what you would get ecstasy or Molly at a party. It's pure. So it's very safe in that sense. They had a blood pressure monitor on me. So I was like a cat on the ceiling, anxious. And they said, you know, why don't you drink this when you're ready? So I drank it. And they said that this is crazy, you guys, in about 30 minutes, your amygdala, which is, you know, up here in the middle, the left side is which is anticipatory fear, is going to shut off 100%. What would that be like? Then the right side of my amygdala, which is actual fear, like if a bear comes into the office, that's going to stay on. Okay, that's good. I want that to be on. So I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to have this thing turned off. So I take it and I'm kind of in that zone of waiting for it to take effect, which was scary for me. And I still had my anticipatory fear. So I was telling them everything I was worried about, and they were being kind, but after about 30 minutes, the therapist said, "Would you like to lie down?" And I said, "Do you think I should?" Which is an important question because I'm giving her my authority. I'm abdicating my authority. Do you think I should? Like, I'm not checking in with myself. And she said, yes. So I lay down, and then she said, "Would you like an eye mask, like a really comfortable eye mask?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." "Would you like earphones?" No, I did not want earphones. I was afraid that earphones were going to block me from, I don't know, hearing them, knowing that I wasn't alone, something like that. I was too scared about that. So I said no. So pretty quickly after I lay down, I just started to feel like I was going into, the only way I can describe it is the sound barrier. Like, I felt like I was coming apart. Like, I felt like a rocket ship that was coming apart, and in a bad way coming apart, not a good way coming apart. Like, I would say I was a 10 out of 10 in terror. And so I was just like, hey, something's not right. I don't feel right. Something's not right. And so the therapist came and sat next to me on the couch, and she put her hand to hold me down, like anchor me. It was good. It was a good feeling. And by the way, the first dose is 120 milligrams. So they consider a full dose 100 or 220. And so it was a full-on dose. So I started to say, when is this going to be over? I was panicking. When's this going to be over? And she said to me, I couldn't see her, right? But she said to me, holding my arm, "Pam, this part is just as important as the good part that's going to be coming. Be here for this part. This is the medicine working. This part is so important." And so I could hear her, and I could philosophically kind of get behind that. But at the same time, on a physical level, I really felt like I was coming apart. So, and by coming apart, honestly, I mean, okay, this is going to sound dramatic maybe, but I felt like I could be annihilated. Like, I could literally be destroyed by the experience I was having. And it was really scary. So she said to me, you know, life is hills and valleys, and it's important to be in the valley all the way and in the hill all the way. And so I was coping, like freaking out, but I was hearing what she was saying, and I think the medicine was starting to work. So then all of a sudden, I shouldn't say all of a sudden, fairly quickly, I had this feeling like I came out of the sound barrier, and I had some distance from that panic place, and like it was far away from me, and I felt like I felt like I could think, and I was well. I felt well, really well inside. But I remembered everything, and I just said, "Wow, I mean, that was really hard." Ooh. So I said something like, I might start crying at this part. I said, "I felt like I was dying, and you didn't get it because you were being so calm." And then she was holding my arm still, and she said, "You were dying, and I didn't get it." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, this is the key of the trauma. You were dying, and nobody got it." And I said, "Yeah." And I felt like on an intellectual level, I've understood that before, but there was something about the guard of my amygdala, the alarm system being quieted, that I felt like it got into my system, where I felt like, for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone with that core trauma of like, the baby, too much is coming in, it's more than I can handle, and I'm dying from it. Like, it's overpowering me, and I can't cope, and nobody gets it. And that's what adoption, that's how it all started off. That's how it's always been. No one got it. No one gets it. So I had this feeling of like being anchored with her, and very grateful. I felt like that she would care enough to be there with me. I felt so grateful. And I kept saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. I just realized I said the grateful word. Hope you're not offended. Different context. Under MDMA, it's okay. Anyway, okay. So then, okay, that's the first thing that happened. Yeah. The second thing that happened that was really important, I pulled a few things out that felt very infancy related to share with you. So the second thing that happened was, for the longest time, it felt like she was sitting there on the couch. Her body was kind of twisted, and her, you know, she still had her hand on my arm anchoring me, which I really appreciated again. And I suddenly said to her, are you I couldn't see her. I said, are you uncomfortable? Because I just feel like your body's got to be kind of twisted up, and I don't want you like secretly resenting me and then starting to like be annoyed, like, when is this going to be over? And then I don't know it. Like, I don't know where you are. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how you are. And she said, and by the way, I mean, you might relate to this, but it's that feeling of like never knowing, like, how secure is this connection? How secure is this attachment? Like, am I safe? Is she going to turn on me? Am I going to have crossed some line I didn't even know was there, and then it's all over? I was scared, you know? So, but scared in the moment, right? And so she said to me, Pam, and it's funny how she used my name, Pam. She said, go inside yourself. You know inside of you how I am. So I was like, okay. So I'm like going inside. I was like, oh yeah, I got it. I got it. I said, you are here on a Sunday to help me heal. And that's all you're about. All you're about is being here helping me heal. You don't care if your back's a little bit twisted up or something. That's not a big deal to you. You might be a little uncomfortable, but that doesn't even matter to you, because if what you're doing is in service of helping me, then you're good. And she said, good. And so I had part of this MDMA therapy. What they're trying to do is they're trying to help people connect up with their inner knowing, like their inner sense of knowing. It's knowing. So, and which, when it comes to like attachment and relationships, I can feel so confused. Is that person okay? Do they like me? Do they not like me? Am I pissing them off? I don't know where the lines are, but in the session with all that alarm quieted, it was so clear to me that she was good and I was good and I was safe. So that was a huge, it felt like maybe something had gotten like unplugged back at the beginning. And somehow this intervention she did with me plugged me back in, where I can now apply it to other situations and people, which is just kind of a miracle, honestly. Okay, so that was the second thing that happened. Okay, are you ready for this one? The next thing that happened was, okay, there I am blindfolded, and MDMA makes you really thirsty, even when you're not dancing at a party or Burning Man or something. So I was really thirsty. So they had this huge thermos of ice cold, perfect water, the best water in the world. So I would say, I'm thirsty, can I have a drink? And they would say, one of the other would say, sure, in this really, sure, like, of course. So they'd pour me in this like mug water, and I'd hear the pouring, and then I'd reach out for it, and then I would take some sips, and I would just be like, oh, that was great, thank you, give it back. Then they like this. I must have done that in 8 hours. I must have done that at least 25 times. And this is gonna sound crazy, maybe it's not gonna sound crazy. I can't tell you how amazing it was. You know how babies, they get fed whenever ideally they get fed whenever they're hungry. And I didn't get fed when I was hungry. My mom left me alone in an apartment while she worked. So I'm sure I was just all messed up with eating and everything. To be given water whenever I was thirsty without any anger or burden, and then just to be able to ask as many times as I wanted to, it was like salve to my soul. I don't even know how to tell you. I mean, you can imagine it was like the biggest gift, really. And every time I would just say thank you. And just feel such appreciation. I wonder, do babies feel appreciation? Do babies feel thank you when they get fed by their moms? Like, it was like a different world. I don't think I've never had anything like that. So that happened. I hope you guys are okay. See, now I'm doing my thing. Are they okay? I can go into my knowing. Pam, go into your knowing. You know how they are. I don't know, maybe it's a mix, but okay. And then the next thing that happened was also pretty wild. They take your blood pressure pretty often when you're doing MDMA because your blood pressure goes up and your heart rate can also go up. And the reason a doctor is there is that if you have a heart issue, they have medication to counteract it. So my blood pressure was higher than normal. It was like 160 over 110, something like that. And it's normally fairly low. But I felt okay, and they were comfortable with it. But I started like kind of touching my chest, like, I don't know why. I just sort of was trying to work something out here or something. So I was like, so you can see me, but I was just kind of touching it. And the doctor came over and put a singing bowl. Do you know what a singing bowl is? Does anyone not know what a singing bowl? Okay, I'm gonna show you, I have one. Okay, this is a singing bowl. If I play it, I'm touching it so it won't work, but you know, you hit it like this and it makes these different tones. They're made in like Nepal or something. So I ordered one the next day after my session. But the doctor put this singing bowl over my heart. I was laying down and started to play it. And I'm not going to cry about this one, but I did the whole first week after. I felt like the sound and the sensation met the chaos that's in my heart, that's been living in my heart the whole time. Like, it reached it. And then after you hit the singing bowl, there's like a ringing that can go on for minutes afterwards. And I was feeling like the ringing was taking my chaos out of my heart. And it was such a relief. I felt like all this time I've been alone in there with this chaos. And finally, how did that doctor know to do that? It was crazy. It just felt like it was something that reached me. It wasn't talking, it wasn't understanding, it wasn't massaging. It was like pulling it out. How are we doing on time, Marcy?
Okay, I'm watching.
Okay. Okay, this is the last thing I'm going to tell you. Marcy, what's a good time for me to, just so I can time myself here?
Keep going. Give yourself another 10 minutes.
Okay. You guys are going to think this, maybe you think this one's really wild. This is maybe the most wild part. It's pretty intense. What happened next was I was laying there and I started to feel like my mouth wanted to open, which is really bizarre. Like, I don't know. I don't open my mouth a lot unless I'm stretching out my jaw from being locked from trauma, you know? But I was laying there and I felt like my mouth wanted to open. And I didn't tell you this, but I had a migraine going into the session on the right side. I couldn't take any medication for it because it would interfere with the MDMA. So I could feel the migraine kind of going to the roof of my mouth underneath it, like a pickaxe kind of a thing. It wasn't bothering me once I took the MDMA, but I was aware of it. So I opened my mouth and I started to push on the roof of my mouth, which if I had not been on MDMA, I would have never done that. And so the therapist asked if I had ever gotten my mouth worked on, like from not a chiropractor, but I don't know, Rolfer or somebody. And I had once and I liked it. So she asked if she could try something on my mouth. And I said, sure. And again, I wouldn't have said yes if I had not been, I would have been like, no. But she put her thumb on the roof of my mouth and dragged the fascia like forward in the roof of my mouth 3 times, really slowly and really hard in a good way, And I felt like she was just setting something in my mouth free. And she explained to me that babies, well, there's like a, this is too long to explain, but there's like the fascia in the roof of our mouth can connect with this whole muscle connection thing in our whole face. And when she did this thing with the roof of my mouth, I felt like something up here got released. And it felt really good. Like she'd taken I don't know, some animal out of my roof of my mouth, had been there the whole time, like a bad pet or something. So she knew some of my history, and she was saying that, you know, there can be a bind in babies. Like if babies are crying too much, but no one's there, or if they're crying and in my case, I got hurt by my birth mom when I was crying, I learned how to shut myself up. And so there's this tension, because what wants to come out is this screaming or this crying, but the world is too dangerous. I can't express myself. So I gotta hold it in. And so then there's this tension going on in my mouth. And that got addressed very overtly in the session, which was really like beyond my wildest expectations, that would have even been something. I didn't think I would even get touched. I didn't think I'd be touched by anybody in the session. It was so physical, but of course, babies are so physical. So I want to give you guys time to answer questions, but I just want to sort of tell you that was kind of it. Like this went on for 8 hours of just a beautiful, connecting, relieving time of wellness, and a kind of wellness I've never experienced. So it was over. I went home. I was tired. I rested for 2 days. I got back with my life, and now it's been 19 days since that happened. But what's happened since the session was over is, I'll tell you, I made a list. Okay, I am sleeping well every night. I don't take sleep medication. I'm sleeping really well every night, every single night since this session. It's a miracle. I don't sleep very well at all. I'm an insomniac. I didn't tell you that. I'm sleeping 7 hours straight through, restful, comfortable. I still have very little anticipatory fear. Like, I got nervous about talking with you about an hour before this started, but other than that, I was fine today. And that's really weird. I still have that deeper connection to my knowing that I told you about already. I still have that. I've really been paying attention to when something hard's going on, something I'm watching on the news, something happening with one of my kids, an argument with my husband, something like that. I'm trying not to skip over the hard moments. I'm trying to remember to stay with them as if they're just as valuable as the good times, in a way that, like, I'm rather than hopping, I'm more like on the ground with these ups and downs, and that feels different. And I feel more heart-centered. I feel like before the session, this could be a whole half-hour talk, but I felt like my will was dragging me around. Like, to have all that trauma, that root ball of trauma, and then trying to function like a normal person required, like, okay, Pam, make a list. Like, don't forget that, write it down, get this done. I know you're tired, but you got to get the dishes done now. Or, you know, I ran myself around and I was exhausted. I could feel in the session how exhausted I was. But I also got a sense that my heart is not exhausted. My heart has been tapped into because I've been protecting myself so hard that I've gone to my will to try to drive myself into living like a normal person, even though I don't feel normal inside. So I have a chance now to live more from my heart, and that feels really different. That's kind of it. And I would just say one more thing. I know this is a big thing to say, but that wild weed growing, I feel like the root ball got taken out. And so I wake up in the morning, is it still gone? It's still gone. 19 days. Tomorrow morning, is it still gone? It's still gone. And so that's why after this was over, all I thought was, adoptees need this. Suicidal people need this. You know, birth moms need this. Like, anybody with chronic, lifelong baby trauma, I have so much hope for this being a new, hopeful treatment for all of us on the horizon. And so I'm sure you have questions. I'm happy to answer your questions, but that's sort of the gist of it.
Great. Thank you. That was really something. Very emotional. And we appreciate you sharing. And yes, the questions are already starting to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and read off what has come in through the chat bar. If you would please raise your hand. Pam, can you start tracking these? I've